anymore either.
Why not?
Yeah, I said, I don't have to go put pants on. That's the one nice thing. I've always been one of my desires to be able to go to a Toastmaster meeting all my life without wearing pants. But anyway.
Don't forget your the pants.
Just don't stand up, right? Please don't stand up. Anyway, the order of the day is to start with Jeremiah, and then we will go to Suni, and after that, Connie will take over, and we'll do a little more talking about what's going on next month. Right now, we plan on being virtual next month. We have no idea what's happening in July, and we had kind of made the decision that we wouldn't have people going to the QS. I have about 3 people champing at the bit to do their QS, and that we would plan on that happening in July. If there's any way to do that, we'd prefer not to do someone qualifying for the qualifying speaker virtually. It'd be better if they had a real audience, and so we'll see how that works. But
Tom,
yes,
if I may intercede, is Linda on? Linda O'Neill.
Yes, I'm here.
So she chaired the first ever District 100 Zoom, it wasn't Zoom, it was GoToMeeting virtually, and she actually had a qualifying speaker on Saturday who I hear did quite well, Linda. How did it go?
I wonder who that was. Did he have anything of value to say? Or?
Mr. Michael Ozier did wonderfully, and he did qualify. Worked out really well.
And it was online, but guess what? It might have been better online, but Tom, I think you should rethink this because it's all the same skills, right, Linda?
Well,
it is. It worked out very well. And for the audience participation or interaction, we had the Q&A at the end of his speech to judge on for that. So it worked out fine.
Well, that was just a knee-jerk reaction initially, but certainly the will of the powers to be and the will of the membership is I'm certainly a great believer in the democracy of the membership and the dictatorship of the district director. So however those two meld together, I am game for anything. But we kind of made that immediate decision for the first couple of months. After that, we'll see what happens. And
makes sense.
With that, I guess, let me see, where are we time frame? We are at 7:07. If we get started now, that's better than usual. We don't even have to read off numbers and books to give away and all those good things. We will have, Jeremiah, are you prepared to get rolling? Oh, well, now Bob's got a flag there. Now, I've been to probably 25 or 30 at least Zoom meetings, and I have heard a lot of Pledge of Allegiance, and I have never heard a good one yet. So maybe we can have everybody do the Pledge of Allegiance, only stay on mute. That way there won't be this, it sounds worse than the Star Spangled Banner or an announcer at a ball game, because nobody says the same word at the same time. So can we put everybody on mute? And then, Bob, you want to lead us in the pledge since you brought the flag in here? Muted? I'm ready. Go.
No, I'd rather leave it to Dennis. He's got the bigger flag.
Oh, okay, Dennis. Well, that's fine with me. You say it, and we will all agree with you, and then speak with you silently. Go ahead, Dennis. Oh, that's a beautiful flag, too. I pledge allegiance to the flag. I'm going to put myself on mute so I don't.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You both for bringing us aware of the importance of maintaining our patriotic awareness. So that was great. I'm glad you did that. We don't usually end up doing that. Sometimes we've done that for special meetings, especially when we had I already forgot. Pearl Harbor Day meeting where we had a lot of military people and so on. We had made a special effort. Okay, are we ready to go? Let's check with Jeremiah and see if he is ready with his presentation on Zoom meetings.
Yes, I'm ready.
All right. We are a distinct honor, and I figured the timeliness could not be better than to have someone come and talk to us about conducting Zoom meetings by someone who knows whereof and has a vested interest in having Zoom meetings succeed and wants to help you all to do the best possible meetings you can with Zoom. And it's amazing. I have to say positive things about it. Being a technological dinosaur, I don't even text, but I think Zooms are great. I've been getting together with, believe it or not, my 8th grade graduating class. I've been getting together with family members all across the country and trying to get together with some fraternity brothers from college, and all on Zoom, let alone the Zoom Toastmaster meetings. So I think it has great potential and great positive possibilities, and it achieved one of my dreams, and that was always the Speakers Bureau could be seen by people all over the district, and especially at once, but even unrecorded. But having a Zoom meeting will help bring some of the people who don't normally make it, and especially the ones that maybe had a difficult time getting out to do it. So I am looking forward to Jeremiah's presentation, and I hope I will learn a lot. I'm sure all of us will. Jeremiah, you got it. Take it away.
Great. Thank you so much, Tom. Thank you. I really appreciate that. I think you kind of built it up a lot more than I was really prepared for, but we'll see how this goes today. But fellow Toastmasters, I wanted to spend some time today to talk a little bit about Zoom. You know, a year ago, we were all talking about that the big change in Toastmasters was going to be pathways, and that was going to be the thing that we were going to focus on this year. Little did we know that all of this was going to happen, and our world was going to be changed upside down. And so I want to talk a little bit about some of the options that we all have with Zoom and some of the things that we're able to do, because we have a lot of times where you'll be inside club meetings and there's always different things. There's always something new to be learning, but it's an opportunity to be able to find new ways to be able to grow. And Zoom is that new way. And I want to start off with just some of the different security features with Zoom. That seems to be a big conversation right now that people are always looking into and trying to understand more and more. And every day Zoom is coming out with something new in regards to security features. Whenever Zoom first came out and when it actually started, before you could just set up a Zoom meeting and off you went. But then we had Zoom bombers come on. So now, anytime a Zoom meeting is set up, what you'll find is they will actually set up a registration link. And if anybody from, I think Esther is on here. So her club in particular uses that. It's actually a link that you can publish. And then from there, they're able to submit their request, they fill out their information, and then it sends them a link to your actual meeting. So it gives you that extra little bit of layer. But you can also be able to set up passwords. You have waiting rooms. Like today, before you came in, we were all set up in a waiting room. So that way you can be able to monitor who is there and be able to touch base. For example, in my club this morning, we had somebody on our meeting that I wasn't for sure who it was. I had them recognize themselves beforehand, so that way I was able to make sure that we had the best security possible. But it's those security things is really what's going to make sure that we're able to have productive meetings. Because a lot of times what we have is we have people that may just want to come on, and especially in these times, they just don't have a whole lot of other things to do besides cause some problems. So we really want to be able to make sure that we're keeping our members safe, but especially as we're having meetings like this where they're recorded, we want to make sure that we know that everybody knows what's going on. But also just outside of meeting, there's a lot of different platforms that we can use within the Zoom feature. And I'm talking a lot about Zoom today. I see Karen's on the call today. And for example, her district, they use GoToMeeting. So each one has their own little different nuances. I'm just familiar with Zoom. But then one of the things that I love about it is it also has different features that you're able to utilize. For those of you who joined us this past weekend, we actually had a webinar. And there's a couple of minor differences between that. So a Zoom meeting is what we're doing here. Everybody can mute themselves, unmute themselves, be able to turn on and off their cameras. It's really a very user-friendly for people to be able to connect and interact together. But webinars is a different function. So a webinar actually separates everybody between panelists and attendees. And only attendees are able to ask, they can ask questions, they're able to chat, different things like that, but they are not able to share screen. They're also not able to turn on their microphones. And so that's important, especially, for example, like we had our meeting and how a lot of the districts are having their meetings currently. Having a webinar is something that's really going to be able to give you a lot more control of your meeting and to ensure that you're able to have a functioning formatted meeting. So those are the two real big differences between those. And it's also important too that whenever you're in a webinar, not only do you get Q&A, but there's also poll features. So if you go to a webinar section, and for example, I was talking to Jose recently about this, but the district, since we subscribe to Zoom every year, we can actually do a live poll to be able to have information and get real-time results for information with webinars. So those different things are really, those are great. But then also the nice part is you can also have breakout rooms. So some of us had an opportunity to participate in the contest this year, and you had the opportunity to be able to participate in the table topics contest. And we actually have our winner this year, Roz Carter. Her picture went off the screen, but Roz did amazing. But one of the great things about it is you're actually able to put members into a separate room. So we currently have an outcome of about 500 people that we're able to utilize inside our account at all times. The nice part is we can put people in different rooms through our account. So that way, and that room has its own security features. It has its own setup. So that way they can be able to talk separately and then be able to talk differently to everybody else and not be able to be heard, but they can also let themselves back into the main room. So those are just a couple of the nice things that you're able to utilize with Zoom. And if any of your clubs have started utilizing that, we actually have a couple of clubs that are looking to do that for their voting, for different opportunities for their members to be able to get a chance to be able to practice. The next thing I want to talk about is virtual backgrounds. And virtual backgrounds, I have a love-hate relationship with virtual backgrounds. I have to be honest with you. I love virtual backgrounds because it gives us an opportunity to personalize ourselves. But I hate virtual backgrounds for the fact of it can sometimes be very distracting. And that's something that we really need to think of as participants in any kind of call. For example, just while I'm on this call and while we've been having this conversation back and forth, my screen continuously changes as people turn on their cameras and turn off their cameras. And so that's something important to remember, that even though that we're attendees, it's important to remember that we do have some proper etiquette. Like right now, somebody just went off. So one of the things that I would recommend is, and one of the proper etiquettes is, you'll always find, just turn off your camera. If you leave your camera off, that allows the opportunity for the speaker to be able to have a controlled screen, but then also main people that need to keep their cameras on are able to, and it doesn't adjust back and forth. There's some opportunities for virtual backgrounds, and I know Dennis was on here earlier and he showed his virtual background. But being able to use the Toastmaster cards to be able to show the colors, the different things that you're able to utilize for the backgrounds can be very beneficial to your meeting. For example, like we were able to utilize the American flag today for our prayer. But the hard part is, and my dislike for them is, like I said before, is sometimes they can be distracting. Every week we're on a call with our RA, and one person on our call looks for different backgrounds to be able to try to create humor in a meeting. And that's all great and everything, but after an hour-long meeting, it starts becoming a little distracting. And whenever we're in these situations, it's important to remember what we're in this conversation for. My background, as you can see, is just my background of my house, but I've set this up specifically to tell a little bit about me. So if you actually look behind me, you'll be able to see my medals behind. They're not nearly as impressive as Ed's, but you'll also be able to see I'm a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. You'll be able to see the organization. You'll be able to see that's my office. But it's an example of who I am. And so it's important to remember that as you're speaking, whatever's going on in the background is also that representation. Now, I do have to tell you a little story real quick before I proceed. You also have to remember sometimes what can come into the background. And I was on a meeting recently. My son, who I love my son to death, all of a sudden I was sitting here and I forgot to adjust my camera before the meeting. And just right off here to this room right here is actually my living room. And as soon as he got out of the bath, he runs out of the bathroom and he runs right to my doorway. The only problem was he wasn't dressed yet. So everybody on that Zoom call got an opportunity to be able to see what my son was made of, needless to say. But those are all opportunities that we're able to learn, and clearly now I make sure I adjust my camera ever before I turn it on. But the next thing that I want to talk about too is we already talked a little bit about it, but I want to talk about videos. We've talked a little bit about turning on and off your cameras in the middle of the speech and how it can really become very distracting. But then also it's important to remember whenever you're moving around, people can see. People can see, even if you're not at your computer, they're able to see if you're not paying attention. They're able to see if you're taking your laptop someplace else, but they're also able to see what you're wearing. Every so often, if you got an opportunity, you'll sometimes see, we do have people that you can actually be able to see, you know, some inappropriate things on their shirts. So all of that kind of stuff is important to remember, that just because we're sitting at home in our own comfort, and as the newscaster showed just recently on the news, you got to make sure you wear pants, because those are all important things that if you forget about, you're going to have a unfortunate moment. But now let's talk about audio. So there's a lot of different things that we can be able to do with audio, and I've seen some people with headphones, and you know, they have their Bluetooth headphones and their things. I just stick with my normal headphones. I'm always scared to death that my headphones are going to die in the middle of a conversation. And I always try to keep myself on mute. But one of the things that you want to do is you always want to make sure you keep yourself on mute if you're not speaking, because that background noise does get picked up. And what you'll find is, depending on the way your participants are actually showing their screen in the video, what'll end up happening is your picture will end up taking over the speaker's picture. So it's important to remember just those little things to be able, and it may be inadvertently, that it may just be a sound in the background that will all of a sudden take over their picture. But let's say you're muted and you just have something you want to be able to add. One of the nice parts is, and if you ever tried it, if you actually try to push your space bar right now, what you'll find, that's my son, if anybody was wondering, that's the unexpected background noise. But if you push the space bar on your keyboard, what it will do is it will actually unmute you for a brief moment of time. So that way you can just speak just for a second. Excuse me, just 1 second. Is he okay? Okay. Okay, sorry, I just want to make sure he was okay. It's the benefits of having kids, I guess. But if you push your space bar, it'll actually allow you to be able to unmute yourself. So that way you can be very, very quickly. But the nice part is you don't have to remember to put yourself back to mute again, because it'll automatically put you back to there. And one of the best features that I love, and one of the features that we've always had a conversation with in my club, is Zoom an opportunity? Does Zoom really give us an opportunity to be able to show our screen? And I know Suni's going to have an opportunity to be able to do a share screen later. But the great part about having meetings is you can actually have the option of sharing your own screen. And if you click if you go to the bottom of your screen, you'll actually see on the left it says mute, stop video, participants chat. If you click share screen, one of the nice things is you actually get an opportunity to be able to share your screen, and whichever screen you want to show, your whiteboard, your iPhone, iPad, any of that different things. So the nice part is, like, you can actually have a whiteboard and be able to brainstorm ideas in the middle of a meeting. But then also you're able to transfer screens over. So a lot of times I'll already have all my screens open for any information I need, and I can just bring them over to the screen I'm sharing. But that's something that each participant is able to do, and they're able to have an opportunity to be able to still utilize the PowerPoint and still be able to get those points across that they were really looking forward to. So those are just a couple of things that you're able to utilize within Zoom. And some of the things, there's a lot of stuff that you can also do outside of it, but these are a couple of tips and information that we can take back to our clubs and be able to hopefully help their meetings run a little bit smoother. This is a process for all of us to be able to help each other grow. And every day I find something new about Zoom that I'm able to utilize. And every day something technology-wise I'm able to just grow from. And so it's so important to be able to take this information, go back and practice with your members and have an opportunity. This month our district is focusing on open houses. So you want to make sure you practice these prior to having your open house. So that way your members, they're able to show what we do in Toastmasters, and they show how we are professional people that are ready and prepared to be able to present. Because every day we're going to have opportunities to be able to utilize this system more and more. And what we'll find in the very near future is that a lot of people, I do believe, will be able to start working from home more. And this is going to become more and more the way that we'll be actually conducting business. I remember 15 years ago, whenever I got into sales, cell phones were a thing of the past. I'm thinking cell phones were nowhere. Nobody really had them. And they absolutely changed our industry, and they changed our world. And I firmly believe that this has put us in a position to where we are going to be utilizing this so much more in our life. So thank you so much, Tom, for the opportunity to be able to spend some opportunity to be able to talk about this. And I want to just see if there's any questions that anybody may have before I proceed to return contact back over to Tom. Any questions? Besides that, my clock is actually incorrectly timed. I saw somebody say. Karen, yes.
One of the things I noticed is when I have you in speaker view, I get to see all of the Jeremiah, but
I'm sorry.
no, that's not a bad thing. But I noticed that sometimes people will call in and use that as their mic and then have a separate link, which is their video feed, so that when they're talking, if you do speaker view, then it just shows like their little icon. You don't see their live face moving.
Mm-hmm.
And it's more difficult if you're hard of hearing to be able to follow along in a video environment. If somebody opts to do the dual call-in, is that something that you preface your keynote saying, can you use a single sign-in? Because we've had a couple of them that do the two and don't even think about that.
So we have so people do have opportunities, and a lot of times one of the part that they end up doing and where that comes from is they actually don't sync their systems together.
Right.
So one of the things that you actually should do is if you look down at the bottom left of your screen where it says mute, what you can actually do is it will actually allow you to switch to phone audio, which then syncs those two together. What you'll find is a lot of people, what they'll do is since they see the phone numbers, they log in via Zoom and then they call the phone numbers. And so that's the reason why it's not syncing together and it doesn't line up together. Excellent. So it's important that whenever you do that, you want to be able to sync those together. So that way you're able to be able to have just one account. It makes it a lot easier to be able to manage as a host, but also it's going to be able to eliminate that double talking is what you're talking about. Cool. Any other questions?
Sarah has one.
Oh, Sarah, please.
A minute. Okay, here I am. A lot of meetings that I've been to, when people want to clap and acknowledge that somebody spoke, they'll put their hands by their head and shake it. And this actually is really quite nice because then you feel acknowledged that somebody did that. Or else they're like Edwin just did, put a hand on and stuff. And all that works well, but we had somebody who is hearing impaired in our Thursday morning meetings now, and she says that you don't put your hands like this. Oh, this camera is so weird. You put it at the side of your head and do this. And then if somebody is muted and you don't want them to mute, you go like that, from muted to unmute. And that way you don't have to say the words and disrupt things.
Right. No, absolutely. And those are all those are all things that people are coming out with is kind of proper etiquettes and everything. But absolutely, and we see that a lot more now where members are doing that. But then also you see where members, if you look right underneath, like on mine, it's right underneath the participants for like asking questions. You can raise your hands. You can say yes, no, thumbs up, thumbs down. And so you have different opportunities also to be able to interact with your members without having to have that. Any other questions?
Just a quick comment.
Oh, yes, Jose.
Would you like to speak a little bit about pinning the person that is talking, especially if they're giving a speech?
That's a great, Jose. Thank you. That's the reason why Jose's program quality director. He's way better than I am at this stuff. But yeah, so if you actually get an opportunity, if you're on your screen right now, and if you take your mouse over the screen of somebody, what you'll see where you could chat with somebody indirectly, but you can also pin their video. So for example, I'm over Al right now. So if I pin Al's video, Al is actually the only person that I see, and I see everybody else's small icons right along the top. So this is an opportunity to where, let's say somebody does have their microphone on, you can actually pin the speaker or whoever you want to be able to have just them show, and it will only show them. And then to be able to unpin them, it's over on the top left-hand side of your screen. You just click unpin, and then it should show up with just a picture of yourself. And then up on the top right-hand corner, you click speaker view. if you see where it says speaker view, and then it takes you right back to where it has everybody. So those are a couple of the viewing options that you're able to have. Yeah.
I have another question again.
yeah.
Sorry. Can you pin more than one person?
For pinning, no. So you pin just the one person. What you can do though is you can hide non-showing participants. So like I always hide everybody that's a non-showing participant. So like if you have those on your screen, you can actually click those same 3 dots and it will say hide non-video participant, and it takes off everybody. So for example, we have 24 people right now with their cameras off. So it gives you an opportunity to be able to only have the people with their cameras on. So like at our contest this past weekend, we had everybody's cameras off. So now you were only able to see the Toastmaster, you were only able to see the timer, and that's all, and then the speaker themselves. So just those different things. That way it really kind of helps eliminate some of the clutter.
And Jeremiah, that worked great for the showcase as well, by the way.
It did. Yeah, that was awesome for the showcase. Esther, you have something?
It's also a comment along the pinning. For my clubs, usually we advise the speaker to pin the timer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that's one thing that has worked very well for us, so that you don't miss the timer along the speaker gallery thing that's
Right.
on here.
Well, and it's interesting. So I spoke this past week at 407, and it's very interesting. So one thing that I learned, that I have to pin somebody else whenever I speak,
Yes.
because I'm not used to seeing myself speak. And whenever I'm talking, it's actually a different feature to be able to see that and to be able to see the mannerisms in the face you make. I never realized I make such weird faces whenever I speak. And so, but it's important to be able to also pin the timer, but also sometimes to be able to do that so that way you're also not distracted, because you're looking at yourself and you see what you're doing, and that becomes a distraction. So great. Okay. Any other questions?
Oh, it's Sarah again.
Hey, Sarah.
Whoops. One of the things that Dominique was talking about when we were doing a meeting was to look at the camera rather than look at ourselves when we're speaking.
Mm-hmm.
It's a little weird and it takes a while to get used to it. And when you're looking at the camera, it looks more like you're looking to everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're looking at yourself, you look like you're looking down
Right.
all the time. So that was a good piece of advice too.
Yeah, and a lot of that really depends on your setup too. So for example, I have dual screens here at my house. So I'm looking at my camera, but my camera's off to one side of one of my screens. But that way I can still be able to look at my Zoom meeting, but it looks like I'm still looking at my camera, but I have my other screen over here that I'm able to pull stuff over from. So it just really depends on your setup and the different things that you have. But having your camera, my camera is actually set at about eye level. And a lot of times what you'll find is people, especially like on their laptops are down on their desk, it's opened up. So it starts changing the angles of everything they're looking at. So just making those adjustments. I know, for example, Karen and Mark, whenever at their place, I believe Mark actually has an eye level camera because he has a standing desk. So all of those different things, if you take into account, is an opportunity to be able to just see what other people are going to see. You can also be able to test any of that stuff too beforehand. If you go to like your video and you go to video settings, you can test your video beforehand, be able to see what your background looks like. Because like, for example, my background back here does not look good virtually. So I know that's why I don't utilize that whatsoever. But you're able to check that out beforehand, but you can also be able to see how you look on the camera, be able to check your eye level, make sure everything lines up beforehand. So that way there's none of those unforeseen instances. Any other questions? We'll take one or two more, and then from there, I'll hand it back over to Tom. Dennis, do you have something?
Yes, I'm wondering, what do you think, or maybe others think, about the use when you can, because your computer will do it, of the green, yellow, and red backgrounds? I find it really kind of, I don't know, it's troublesome to me when I'm watching a speech and to see the different improvisations for the time indicators. It's hard to even tell the color of them sometimes, or I know some computers won't do the background well, but when they do, I find it so much easier to see when the change comes and where you're at in the speech time.
No, I personally, I like those different colors. If it's able to be used, I like it, because I would agree with you. A lot of times what we get is, well, we need to have, not only do we need to have the card, but then they need to have green written on it. There's so many, we've almost overcomplicated the timing features, I feel, in a lot of fashions, whenever it comes to Zoom meetings, because people are always saying, oh, well, you need to write green because they may not be able to see that it's green. So I think that's where it really comes out great. And like Bob just did a great example of what those colors look like. So that way you can really be able to see, yeah, exactly like what you're doing. It's very clear, it's clear cut, but it also really is in line with exactly what we do during our Toastmasters meetings. You know, we don't say green, yellow, red. We just show those colors, and it really keeps us right in line with those overall ideals of whenever we were meeting face to face. We have time for one more question. Any other questions?
Make sure you also include the sound effects in case you have visually limited, like Susan Ali or whatever.
Yes. Yeah. Now that's yeah. So you do have something like that where if you have somebody that's visually impaired, you're going to make adjustments to that. But we already have those. We already kind of figured those up, and those are already all discussed beforehand. Whenever you get to things, because you will have opportunity, or you will have times where you are going to need that. But that's always discussed beforehand in meeting. But we would do that anyways. Okay. One last question. And okay. None seeing. Thank you all so much. I hope you had an opportunity to be able to learn something today. I hope you enjoyed this. And I hope your clubs are taking advantage of this opportunity. Once again, I would like to just give one plug that the district has a Zoom account that we are offering to any of your clubs to be able to utilize. So if you would like that, please feel free to contact me, and we'll make sure you get you guys on the schedule. Thank you so much. Stay safe, everybody. And back to you, Tom.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much. It's such an important topic for this time that you gave us so much and gave us opportunity to answer questions. I know once in a while there might be an interference, two clubs meeting at the same time, like my Saturday morning club meets on Saturday morning, and sometimes there are district things going on. You can sign up for your own free account. You get 40 minutes. And if they kick you off, which hasn't happened very often for me, you can pretty much immediately get back on. So just might prepare people ahead of time for that possibility. If you don't have a professional account like Suni does, and that she gets her extra pat on the back for all that, but Suni will be our next speaker, but I did want to thank her especially because she's the one responsible for giving us an opportunity to meet for more than 40 minutes using the district's web account also. So those are a couple of good things. I want to throw in thank you to Bob. First time I heard about the actual visual virtual background, that was good when Bob sent that out, and a couple of clubs are starting to use it, and it certainly is effective rather than making sure people write the word green on them. We had a club meeting where he put green on a yellow cardboard. So this, what is that, yellow or green? But anyway. But I want to criticize Bob. That yellow is nothing to brag about. I mean, you can find a yellower than your orange. But anyway, okay, let's get on to our next person. Again, my right-hand person that has really helped me to make Speakers Bureau work well, and with all her assistance and help, getting flyers out and so on, is one of our QSs from my home club, and now she's actually in two of my home clubs, Suni Gayle, and she's going to tell me something that probably I need to do, and how to be organized and organize your speeches. So let me give you her introduction. And it is, when you need to give a speech, how do you start working on it? Are you using the same strategy you learned during your first Competent Communicator manual? Were you looking over my shoulder, Suni? That was a long time ago, too. Back when it was 15 speeches, for those of you that aren't part of a history. Audiences are much more savvy today than they were 10 years ago, thanks to the proliferation of online videos. Those tried and true formats may be perceived as boring. Truly powerful and effective speeches that motivate and inspire audiences require a new approach. Suni Gayle, QS, will be sharing advanced organizational strategies that will take your speech writing to a whole new level. Her presentation is titled How to Create a Not So Run-of-the-Mill Presentation That Will Knock the Socks Off Your Audience. I'm not sure that thought of that. All those audiences without socks is another story altogether. But we're looking forward to hearing some organizational tips from Suni Gayle. A little round of applause for Suni.
Don't know about this. We do. If I were you, I'd get changed, sweetheart. Oh, give up, Mark. All right. Yeah, they love them. I hope Tim likes his kimono. Well, I guarantee he'll like it as much as that kilt he gave him last year. Jill, I'm a photographer. I love taking pictures of people in their element. Holding socks is my element? Oh, I mean, you're taking care of your family. That's terrific. In fact, I'm thinking maybe one day I'd like.
Suni, you're muted still.
Really? I've never heard you talk like that before. Yeah, well, that's one of the
We're
reasons.
not hearing good sound, Suni.
Those that look at marriage, see what it's like day in, day out. Make sure it's not too mundane for me.
Okay, sorry, let me manage participants. Somebody has a TV on that I'm just gonna mute them. All right. All right. Hello, fellow Toastmasters, qualified speakers, accredited speakers, and visitors. Today, I'm going to share with you 3 advanced strategies for organizing a speech and a 5-step process for how you can use these strategies in your next presentation. Now, if you're like me, this is the moment where you might think about shutting off your camera and going and getting ready for bed. Or you're thinking, I cannot take another boring speech. But wait, please don't shut off your camera yet. I promise you this speech is going to get a whole lot better. This was my opening sentence. What about this signaled that boredom was up ahead? Well, first of all, it's not a great opening for sure. It doesn't grab you. I don't tell a story. I don't make some sort of catchy statement. My speech title was unusual, and it signaled that you were about to experience something different and maybe even exciting. This opening sentence, in contrast, though, is very much run-of-the-mill when it comes to speeches and presentations. But here's another thing that you may not have thought of. My opening statement tells you that my speech is going to be predictable. You know I'm going to go through 3 strategies and then lay out 5 steps. Now, if you're a person who takes notes, you may have already numbered down the left side of your page. If you're a longtime Toastmaster, then you're probably going to keep a running tally in your head to make sure that I actually cover 3 strategies and give all 5 steps. Don't get me wrong, this is a solid, reliable way to structure a presentation, but if you really want to make an impact on your audience, then there is a better way. We all know that stories are powerful vehicles for transformation, and this is why we tell stories in our speeches. But what is the magic ingredient that makes a story so powerful? And if we were able to figure out what that magic ingredient was, and we added it to our presentations, would it make our presentations just as powerful? I believe it would. Take a moment and think about your favorite story. If you have a blank piece of paper handy, then write it down because we're going to do a little bit of exercise with that story. It can be a movie, a book, or a play, and we'll be analyzing it later. Okay, you got your favorite story? What makes a story a story? Well, stories have a beginning, a middle, and an end. If you don't have one of these components, then you don't have a story. What you have is a moment. If we get a little more technical, stories have plot structure. So there's exposition, meaning you have the setting and the backstory. There's some kind of rising action. It reaches a climax. There's falling action, and then there's a denouement or the resolution. These are things that make a story much more interesting. One of the most commonly used, most well-known plot structures is, and I bet you all are thinking it, the hero's journey. Here we have our protagonist walking along, living his ordinary life, and bam, something happens. Some sort of bad fortune stops him in his tracks. He feels compelled to go on his journey. He sets out, he encounters hardships, but he continues on. And then he reaches the top and he's transformed and he now lives his life at a whole new level. Many stories that we know and love follow the hero's journey plotline. But there are actually many different kinds of plots, and we're going to talk about some of those. But first, we need to talk about story shapes. If you haven't had a chance to watch Kurt Vonnegut on video talking about story shapes, you really need to Google him. He is hilarious, and the information that he provides is profound. There's an 18-minute version floating out there. There's a 4-minute version. I say the 18-minute version is totally worth watching. The idea of mapping a story is what Kurt Vonnegut does is he creates a graph, and on the vertical axis, he calls it the GI axis. He plots G for good fortune, which is health, wealth, and romance, and I for ill fortune, which is sickness or poverty. He then has a horizontal axis, and it's B for beginning and E for end. If we were to plot the hero's journey on Vonnegut's graph, this is what it would look like. We have our hero. He's slightly better than average, his life is, he's living his life, and then bam, the event happens, and it drops him down into this adventure, into this journey. He experiences hardships as he climbs up, but he overcomes and he is triumphant. So that's the hero's journey plotted out. That's the story shape. As I mentioned, there are actually 6 or 7 different types of plots, depending on who you ask. Christopher Booker wrote a book on this, so we're going to use his reference. This portion of my presentation is actually going to be interactive. So if it's quiet where you are and you'd like to participate in the discussion, feel free to unmute yourself and leave yourself unmuted, or press and hold down the space bar, as Jeremiah said, to speak. And then when you release, you'll go back to mute. Here are the 7 basic plots according to Christopher Booker. Overcoming the monster, rags to riches, the quest, voyage and return, comedy, rebirth, and tragedy. Of these 7, 6 are actually hero's journeys. So the first one is overcoming the monster. Here, the protagonist sets out to defeat a monster, which represents evil. Can you think of an example of an overcoming the monster story? Anyone?
Frodo Baggins in Lord of the Ring.
Frodo, yes. The Lord of the Rings actually qualifies in a couple of different plots, but yes, that can be one. Anyone else? Oh, if you're muted, I didn't hear you.
Oh, he muted me. The 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf.
Oh, interesting. Yes, the 3 Little Pigs and the Big Bad Wolf. The 2 stories that come to my mind are James Bond, there's always an evil villain, and the Star Wars movies. They're trying to defeat the Death Star and Darth Vader. The next basic plot is the rags to riches. So here we have a poor protagonist. They acquire some sort of power and wealth and a mate, and then they lose it all, and then they gain it back, and they grow as a person as a result. Anybody think of a rags to riches story?
Cinderella.
Yes, that's my number one too. Anyone else?
Slumdog Millionaire.
Oh, yes. I love that story. I had forgotten about that one. Another one is Charles Dickens' Great Expectations. The third plot is that the protagonist and his companions go out to acquire an important object or get to a location. So in this graph, you can see there's a princess there. And by the way, you'll notice that I do use male references in all of these plots. It's something that I picked up from Joseph Campbell. He said that there are no hero's journeys about women. Of course, he was saying that many years ago when he was alive, but that it has just, in my head, the hero's journey is always about a male. So my apologies if I'm offending anyone by not using both genders.
Well, if he said it now, he still wouldn't be alive.
Yeah. So the protagonist, is he still alive? Oh, my bad. Okay. So the protagonist and their companion set out to acquire an important object or to get to a specific location. They face temptations and obstacles along their way. And what are some examples of quest stories?
Of course, Lord of the Rings.
Yes, Lord of the Rings.
But I also think like Apocalypse Now, in some ways.
Oh, I haven't seen that movie. So we'll agree with you.
Star Wars, maybe?
Star Wars could be?
Pilgrim's Progress.
Yes, Pilgrim's Progress, The Odyssey, and the Indiana Jones movies. These are all protagonists that go on a journey to retrieve something or go to a special location. Voyage and return. Here, our plucky hero sets out on a voyage. He has several adventures and misadventures in a foreign land, and he returns home a changed man. What are some examples of voyage and return stories?
I was thinking of Sinbad.
Sinbad, yes.
Prodigal Son.
The Prodigal Son.
Outlander.
Outlander. Alice in Wonderland, Back to the Future, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe. These are all voyage and return stories. Comedy. Now, we tend to think of comedy in the sense of humor, but Booker wanted to emphasize that he uses it to mean triumph over adverse circumstances, resulting in a successful or happy conclusion. He also wanted to point out that it refers to a pattern where the conflict becomes more and more confusing, but at the end, everything is made plain in a single clarifying event. Okay, so it's a pattern where the conflict becomes more and more confusing, but at the last minute, everything is made by a single clarifying event.
What about everything Agatha Christie?
Yes, Agatha Christie, exactly. Any other ideas?
A Midsummer Night's Dream?
I'm afraid I don't know Shakespeare, so we'll say you're right.
The Game or Fight Club? Anything pretty much David Fincher?
Yeah. I thought of I Love Lucy. It just seemed like crazy things were happening to her, and then things came together at the end. And believe it or not, most romantic comedies fall into this category, like Bridget Jones' Diary.
What about Gilligan's Island?
Gilligan is, yes, exactly. That's Gilligan.
How about All in the Family?
All in the Family, interesting. I'll have to think about that. Rebirth. I'm sorry?
Frozen.
Oh. Okay, so then the next to last category is rebirth. And this is where an event forces the main character to change their ways, and they often become a better individual. What are some examples of rebirth plots? Right now, the big thing are the Marvel and DC comics. every superhero and every villain is a rebirth story. And it was interesting because I actually drew a line going down to indicate the villains, but actually this graph is correct in that even though a villain is reborn as something bad, he's actually living a better life for himself.
Isabella in 4400.
Okay, I don't know that story, but we'll go with it. And another one?
Moses.
Oh, Moses, yes. A Christmas Carol, Scrooge. Scrooge experiences rebirth. Our last plot then, and the one that is not the hero's journey, is tragedy. The protagonist is a hero with a major character flaw, or they've made a great mistake from which that is ultimately their undoing. This unfortunate end evokes pity at their folly and the fall of a fundamentally good character. So here's a good person, but they have a major character flaw, or they've made some kind of a mistake, and it is their undoing. Can you think of any examples?
Aaron in the Bible, when Moses goes up to get the 10 Commandments, he makes the golden calf.
Oh, interesting. Yes.
I'm going to go back to Shakespeare, but Macbeth.
Yes, Roxanne, I was going to say Macbeth.
Or Hamlet.
Or Hamlet. Or King Lear.
For those of us who binge watch TV shows, Jesse Pinkman in Breaking Bad.
For a movie, No Country for Old Men.
Oh, interesting. I hadn't thought about which character in No Country for Old Men.
The guy with the cattle gun? No.
I knew it wasn't the assassin.
Well, there is tragedy in there, but there's also the hero's journey too.
Yes, yes.
Fatal Attraction.
Fatal Attraction. Oh, interesting. Yes. So those are the 7 basic plots. Here's a summary of them. Can a few of you, 1 or 2 of you, share what was your favorite story and what plot structure does it fall under? Anyone?
So I have this Vanderslice. I have a question for you. Where would My Fair Lady fall?
I think it's Rags to Riches, maybe.
Rebirth.
I think there's also tragedy in it.
Well, tragedy means that they end worse off than they started. And I think she
just ended up where she started.
Lady. Yeah.
Where she starts.
Well, her father gets married at the end.
Okay. Anyone else? What's your
I
favorite?
think we know why My Fair Lady works so well, because it has so many different subplots.
Yes. Yes, for sure.
Yeah, sounds like.
And one more person, what's your favorite movie and what plot line?
Movie Joseph in the Bible, he actually, I would say that's a voyage in return. He actually is sold into slavery by his brothers, and then he comes back at the end being the second Pharaoh, and he meets his father and his brothers. So I would say it's a voyage in return. Would you say, or what would be the?
I think that interpretation definitely works. Yes, it could be other plot structures as well. Yeah, but for sure, voyage and return works for Joseph.
Sticking with that same theme, if you will, then I would say Paul, right? Because he starts out by persecuting the Christians, so he starts out on the monster one, and then he ends up in a better place.
Oh, yeah, it's interesting.
This is why the Bible stories work so well.
I agree.
Yeah. So what then is the magic ingredient in these stories? Well, change happens in stories on 3 different levels. The first level is the physical or the actual. If I just tell you what the protagonist is doing, then it's kind of dry and boring, right? There's this guy, something bad happens, he goes on a journey, he overcomes, and he lives happily ever after. But that is a form of change that happens. On a second level, there's emotional change. When we add an emotional change, that kind of makes the story more interesting. There was this ordinary neutral guy, something happened, he felt great fear, he felt he had to do something about it, so he found the courage, he kept going, he overcame, and now he's exhilarated and fearless. On the third level though, there's transformation. This is the story of how this ordinary guy became changed on the inside, and he was able to change his destiny. This third level is where stories motivate and inspire us, and this is where story magic happens. So I've been talking for 19 minutes now, and you're probably thinking, well, this is all good and interesting, but what does this have to do with giving a presentation? Let's talk about how we can use that story magic in presentations. Normally, presentations are about information. We begin by thinking, what's the best way to present this? How should I organize it? What's logical? What makes sense? It's all about the information. But what if we approach this in a completely different way? What if we approach the presentation as a story? Now, I'm not saying that we begin our business meetings with once upon a time and we end with, and they lived happily ever after. No, that's not what I mean at all. What I mean is, what if we design the whole presentation to follow one of the plot structures? Which raises the question, if we use our presentation as a story, if we design our presentation and it's not around information, we design our presentation not around information and logic, but as a hero's journey. And if it is a hero's journey, then who is the hero? Any ideas?
Your audience, right?
Yes, exactly. There's a book that I cannot recommend highly enough. It's called Resonate by Nancy Duarte. Nancy Duarte, her company does presentations and presentation graphics for all the top, I think it's like the top 90% Fortune 500s. And she says in her book, you are not the hero who will save the audience. Your audience is your hero in the presentation. Okay, so if the audience is the hero, then what is our role as the presenter? Well, Nancy has something to say about that as well. So what's your role? You are the mentor. Your role is to give the hero guidance and confidence, insight, advice, training, or magical gifts so that he can overcome his initial fears and enter into the new journey with you. If this were Star Wars, the audience would be Luke Skywalker, and you, the presenter, would be Yoda. So how do we do this? How do we sprinkle this story magic into our presentations? Well, there are 5 steps to creating presentations as a story. First of all, identify the plot structure of your narrative. If you're a financial planner and you're working with small business owners who have had to file bankruptcy, which plot would you use?
Rags to riches?
Rags to riches, most likely, yes. If you're presenting a workshop to high school students and their parents on how to get into an Ivy League college, what plot structure would you use?
It's needs.
The quest?
Yes, the quest. You're going after that thing that you want.
Why is so much?
I am sorry, I can't hear you. Okay. And then if you were teaching a case study about Enron and the energy debacle.
Tragedy.
Yes, tragedy. Because that's the only plot structure that ends with the protagonist being in a worse place than where they started. So you figured out your plot structure. Now you need to get to know your hero. Normally, we would call this an audience analysis. So you're going to brainstorm and research everything you know about your audience, your protagonist, before they start on their journey. What is their life like today? What are their pain points? And then brainstorm about what is their life going to be like when they're transformed. And you might focus on things like benefits and positive feelings that they'll experience. Once you feel like you've got a good understanding of your hero, then you'll map out their journey. And you'll notice that every journey has peaks and valleys. There's no journey where it's just a straight upshot and they reach their goal. Every story involves getting over challenges. Now, the peaks and valleys doesn't actually have to be challenges. For example, if you're doing a sales presentation, then the valleys for your audience might be their objections to the purchase, and your peaks might be your responses. So there are different ways you can look at these plot structures in your presentation. Then create the narrative, and this is where you're going to include all three of those levels. Make sure you have the facts and the details, the physical aspects of the story. Be sure that you address the emotions. What are they feeling at each stage of the process? And how are they changing? Because ultimately, the end goal is for them to be transformed. Once you've got all that, then you're ready to actually create your presentation. You'll take the different aspects of your narrative. You'll take all of the different levels of change, and that's where you'll create your slides and how you'll order your information. I hope this presentation has been helpful and that you will be tempted to try sprinkling some story magic in your next presentation. Back to you, Tom.
Fascinating presentation. Really great. We're going to show their hands, right? Yes, it's really tremendous seeing, as I said, seeing people that haven't been to Speakers Bureau before here and getting a chance to share the skills that we have within Speakers Bureau with the audience and having the audience become our hero, right? By learning from those and taking those skills they take with them onto the other clubs. It was one of the things I did want to mention, one of those things that's special about Zoom meetings, and maybe someone more sophisticated than I can tell me how we might do that once we start meeting in person back at the VA hospital. By the way, if I did not mention this somewhere along the line, we got a response from the VA hospital when they told us we would not be able to meet that made us feel very welcome. They said they're looking forward to us coming back and meeting when they can. So it's not like we have to worry about our location. They seem to be happy with us. But one of the things, a thought I want to put in people's minds that are more sophisticated than I am in this area, which is almost anybody, in the last week and a half, I have attended Zoom Toastmaster meetings with people from 3 different countries, Lebanon and Great Britain and Canada, and that's a pretty special little facet to add to your various Toastmaster meetings in terms of the experience of attending a meeting. And so that's pretty special. We might want to think about how we can do that once we start meeting in person, to be able to have someone coming in from another country or from another location far away and sharing a speech with them. So I'll let you think about that. Until now, we will go on and thank Suni very much for that presentation. I'll be thinking about stories when I do my next speech at 2 in the morning. Anyway, our next speaker, nothing personal, not to put anybody else down, but my favorite person in Toastmasters, my favorite Toastmaster in the district, and she will be doing, sharing with her 40 years of creative table topics. And one of the things I will mention, I see Roxanne from 1348 is here, that we did at that meeting, and she wasn't going to bring up. Connie wasn't going to bring up, but that was they used the special effects involved a virtual background to have you idealize what your location, where you wanted to be and where you would like to visit. And so that background was behind you when you did your, whether it was table topics or when you were speaking. So that was a special little touch. But not to put things off any longer, Connie has, I know, a lot of ideas to share. So our next speaker on creative table topics, who has done many presentations at district conferences and TLIs and that sort of thing, Connie Jameson. I don't know what you want to see, you or you want to see the audience.
Sliding on over. Am I unmuted? Yep.
You are.
Okay. Sliding on over Tom had to twist and twist my arm to have me join Toastmasters. I think the primary reason was this thing I heard about called table topics. I thought, well, I can practice a speech over and over and over till I have it memorized, and then I could probably stand up and give it. But table topics, oh my goodness, that was so frightening to me. I soon learned, thanks to my wonderful club members of Club 815, my home club, Club 797, and other clubs, that, yeah, table topics can be a little bit fearful or frightening, but a whole lot of fun. We have more laughs, more fun times through table topics. We get to know one another through table topics. In fact, in case you didn't know, there is a club in our district, Spontaneous Speakers, that is totally table topics. Tom and I belonged to it for a while. It was lots of fun. We went back to visit because we didn't have to drive all the way there. And wow, we had a great time. You have a couple sessions of table topics, plus you have the opportunity, if you want to challenge yourself, to do a longer length table topic. You're given the topic, you have a minute or so to think about it, and then I believe it's either 3 to 5 or 4 to 6 minutes that you speak. Anyway, check them out. They're a specialty club, so they meet just once a month on a Sunday evening. Lots of fun, called Spontaneous Speakers. Also, I want to recognize that, in case some of you didn't know, that my husband, Tom Jameson, is the person responsible for table topics actually being a contest that we can all enjoy and be able to see more people than just those in our own local clubs. So there you go. I start with some tips and hints. We know that table topics is part of our meetings so that everybody gets a chance to talk. If you're not scheduled to be the Toastmaster, general evaluator, speaker, you still should speak each time. So you want to make sure, if you're table topics master, that you check out that schedule and you first of all call on the individuals who might not be able to speak otherwise. You want to let the guests know that they are certainly invited to speak, but reassure them that they don't have to. I found that probably about 50-50 as far as a percentage of guests that choose to participate in table topics. What we usually do is try to have a few Toastmasters speak first, so they get an idea what's going on. Don't have the guest be the first person called upon. Then make sure they don't get too difficult a topic. And what I like to do is say, if this topic doesn't appeal to you, you could talk on any one of the topics you heard spoken to before they are called upon. So that's a nice way to, I think, to handle the guest situation. I found that when Tom and I went to a gavel club, I enjoyed the situation so much. A Toastmaster, Susie Dorn, had a group of homeschooled students, and there was a fairly large group, but I found something happened. When they were called upon for table topics, after their initial fear, they would get up, and this is what would happen. Tell us about your favorite pet. They'd start strongly. My favorite pet was my dog I had when I was in elementary school. He was my best friend. I just loved him so much. He was my very favorite pet. So about 15 seconds or 20 seconds into the time period, they'd run out of steam. I saw this happen over and over, and so I said, well, next time when I visit, can I give a little presentation? Because I know they can go more than that 15 to 20 seconds that they were averaging. So what I did is I gave a presentation, and it was called, or at least I referred to it as, Go for the green. Try to get to that green light or that green card. Some of the tips I gave them, I said, add details or specifics. You know, what was the name of your dog? How old were you when you had the dog? What type, what breed of dog was it, and so forth. Next, some stories or examples of what made that dog so special. What did you and your dog do? Another, if or on the other hand, let's say you talked about your dog and, oh my goodness, the green light's not there yet. So you could say, well, if you had asked me about the worst pet, it would be my sister's dog, that yippy little chihuahua that bugged us all the time. So you can say if, or on the other hand, if it had been about something else. Or you could use your imagination and just go crazy. Say, well, my favorite pet was that superhero dog. Yes, I could grab onto him and we'd go flying through the neighborhood, and let them know that, hey, when you give that response, it doesn't have to be factual. It doesn't have to be real. You can just have fun, get crazy. You could also use the who, what, when, where, why. Where were you living? When did this happen? What made the dog so special, and so on. I found that after that, we went back a couple weeks later, they were all getting to the green. So if you have somebody, especially a new member, who is really struggling with trying to think of enough to say to get to the green light, these could be some tips that could be given. And you could tell them also, another good hint is to practice. You know, we all give our best responses on that drive home after the meeting. So think of what would be a better response to your own topic and the topics that were given to other people. Also, as I said, I learned that table topics could be lots of fun. Many of you know Becky Palmer. I think she was the first one who used this response. Thank you, Mr. Table Topics Monster. I would know right away, oh, she doesn't like that topic necessarily. Or a person might say, I'm so glad you asked me that. And you know, they're not. Or I've been thinking about that for ages and ages. And then we realize that we all have been in that situation where we're given a topic, oh my goodness, what am I going to say? And that's what makes it fun. We're all in this together. And I think once you realize that, you don't worry about how embarrassed you're going to be about your response. You learn to just have fun with table topics, see it as a way to grow and a way to learn more about one another. So that's what I wanted to share in that capacity. Now, it was mentioned to me that I might want to address table topics in the age of Zoom. Ay. As Tom mentioned, he's a dinosaur, I am also. But I have a big thank you for Rob Gunneman. After I knew I was going to do this, I attended a Saturday morning Toastmasters meeting, and lo and behold, Rob was the table topics master. The theme was celebrations, and this is how it was handled. He had a list of numbers, and I guess that corresponded to what the image or the picture or photo was, but he could just click on it, and we would see a picture that looked as if it were a birthday celebration or people wearing these green shamrock hats or whatever. And the person would see it, and all of us would see it for a few seconds. And then that person would respond about what the celebration was and how they were going to celebrate it or what they were going to do or something from the past. So that was a good example for me. Of course, Suni, just this very evening, shows us if we become more talented, how we can use this screen to share. But on the other hand, we had our newer member of our club be the table topics master, and we never saw him. he was one of those individuals that couldn't get on. I guess he didn't have a camera on his device or whatever. And so Kevin, who did a great job, presented his topics, and we never once saw him. So it can be done. So just check it out, practice, think about what can and cannot be done, what should and shouldn't be done with this format. Moving on, some of the procedures or formats. We have fun sometimes saying, you know what, you get to choose your topic. And of course, that will be choosing a number, or the card is upside down on the little table or whatever. Other times you might want to tailor it to the individual. You might actually want to say that topic and then call on somebody because you want them to shine, or you want the other members to find out about that person. There can be a grab bag format. People reach in, pull out their topic, or perhaps there's 2 or 3 bags and you pull out, okay, I'm going to pull out this. One idea is a famous person and the other is a job. And they have to talk about why this individual, maybe Superman, would make a great waiter, and talk about it in that way. Or maybe 3, taking a vacation, pull out, you're going to this location with this mode of transportation, and you either have this much money to spend or this person is your travel companion, and go from there. So the good old grab bags. Role playing, a continuing story. Somebody starts it. This is a great one if you're minus a table topics person. Somebody can start the story, and when they reach a certain time, the light or a little bell, then the next person continues on. Or if you need to fill in, you could do the round robin. I start a topic. I give my topic to Suzanne. When Suzanne finishes, she thinks of a topic and gives it to someone. That way, you're not burdening somebody with having to come up with topics for everybody. Most of us can think of at least one topic, and it can just be on any subject, but it helps fill in that evening or morning in case you don't have your person. Now, where to find ideas? We love playing games, but I found sometimes what's happening to me? Something's happening to me.
No, I tried getting on my iPad at the same time.
Okay. Not really, but I'm still echoing. But
I'm mute. Yeah.
Tom and I love table games, but sometimes what we find is that people, once they try it out, then it gets burdensome as far as moving around the board and all, but they like those situations, those questions. So what I've done sometimes is gone to the thrift store, buy the game, and if we don't like playing it as a board game, then I get rid of the board. I keep the little cards. Here's one called Hear Me Out. Your straight A college senior wants to drop out and travel the world. What's your advice? So there's a number of cards that can be used for the topics. Or this one you might want to be a little cautious about because it's called Controversy. And some of these are quite controversial, but for certain clubs, certain situations, maybe the debate club might enjoy something like this. And I chose some of the least controversial. Americans are too preoccupied with diet. Internet dating is more dangerous than, quote, conventional dating. Children in public schools should wear uniforms. Okay, so those are some of the least controversial, or least the topics that could cause some concerns. Now, a way to handle these could be something like this. You're given the topic and you just talk about it. Here's another idea. You debate with yourself. Well, yeah, maybe Americans are too preoccupied with diet. I mean, everybody's going on a diet and then they lose some weight and then they fall off of it and they get back that weight and more and ding. On the other hand, you know, if we don't, so you maybe have a little bell and after 30 seconds or so, the bell's rung and then you have to take the other side and that's rung and you have to take the other side. So back and forth, that's an idea of something you could do with a topic such as that. Another place you could get ideas would be once in a while, somebody will give you one of these cute little calendars with and perhaps for each day, it has a little saying, a quotation or a saying of some kind, and you could keep this and come and use it. I have a little book of Chinese proverbs from older times, from olden times. Somebody for Christmas, I think it was, gave us these handy dandy, the 40 Conversations game. And I think they're more for kids maybe, but here are some sticks and they could reach in. Ice cream cones or snow cones? Would you rather lose the ability to read or lose the ability to speak? What job would you be absolutely terrible at? So these again are like the cards that we've probably seen for Toastmasters, from Toastmasters or other sources, but this is something that you can have people just reach in and pull out and be a source of topics. And some of those you might want to leave. If you have a club supplies, just leave them right there. I've also used calendars, tearing the pages off the calendar at the end of the year, and you could use those for scenes, either nature or some of them have funny sayings on them, and you could use those for your topics. You could have business cards, either find them or you could make business cards and then use those for a topic. For example, you're going for an interview for this job. You picked up the card and be interviewed, but how are you going to prepare for that? What are you going to say to get that job? That's your business. Advertise your business to us. Or what is it like a day in the life of somebody working for this company? So you could do that, or you could cut them out of a magazine or whatever. So businesses or jobs. You could take your Toastmaster magazine and have an article, read the headline, and have somebody share what they think that article's about. Maybe they've read it. If they haven't, well, just have it be a topic. And of course, you can recycle or steal from other clubs. We in Toastmasters do that. We welcome it. I'm going to give you an example of how you can take an idea and then just change it, move it up a notch or change it slightly. We had a person in our club, she worked at a thrift store, so she had a source of very inexpensive books. She brought some of those books to a meeting, and there was a wide range of sizes and shapes and topics. Here's what could be done. First, you could see the books. You could come up and select a book and tell about it, why you like this book. You could be told to either be the person who read the book or the person who wrote the book. Okay, next level could be the books are wrapped. They're in plain brown wrappers. So you choose a book and you don't get to choose what the title of the book is, but maybe it's a big book, a little book, flat book, whatever. Then you open it and find out what you chose and share about the book. Or even one more level, choose that wrap book, tell all about it, and then after you're finished telling about it, then you get to unwrap it and see what the book was. So you can use an idea and then just move on and change it a little bit. One of my favorite situations is to build topics around a special day. And if you look at your calendar, you'll see that in every month we have traditional special days, New Year's, so you could do something on resolutions, or Easter, 4th of July. But then if you want to, you can go and find those very unusual, strange days. National Hot Dog Day, and have a series of topics, mustard or ketchup. The puzzling question, why do buns come with a certain number of buns and hot dogs with a different number of hot dogs and the buns? And where's your favorite place to eat hot dogs? Should they be grilled or some other choice, and so on? So you can look online and find out all those unusual special days, I don't call them holidays, and build your topics around that. Another idea would be to use your club's anniversary. And you could have topics, and you could call on people you probably know by then, which ones might be able to tell some history of the club, and others to tell what plans they might have for the club for the future. Or somebody that's fairly new, what do you enjoy most from the club? What are you learning from the club? So the club anniversary. Around contest season, you could have other kinds of contests. You've entered, what do they call it when the cat, try to keep cats in line?
Herding cats.
Herding cats contest. You won it. How did you do that? Or a contest for any number of weightlifting or whatever you want to have. They could be actual contests or crazy contests. But you could do that around contest season. Elections. When it's around election time, you could campaign. You could campaign for yourself, or you could campaign for someone else. And maybe you'll surprise somebody in your club by saying, well, I want to urge you to vote for Tom Jameson for dog catcher. Woo. I know he'd be great, and campaign for the person. Or for a measure that you think that is either on the ballot or you figure should be on the ballot. For Chinese New Year, you could have proverbs. We had one lady in a club who actually made her own fortune cookies. That sounds like a lot of work. I think there are places you can go and buy them, but she made her own fortune cookies. So then you would reach in and open up your fortune cookie and respond to that. Words, phrases, quotations. You can give someone a word or a series of maybe 3 unconnected words, and they build a story around those words. One of our members liked to do painting. She had rocks with an inspirational word on them. And we would respond to the rock that we were given, and then we could take them home. Strange laws. There are sources where you can find some of these crazy laws that are on the books in different locations in the country, and you could respond to those. Headlines, maybe from your own local paper or National Enquirer, or maybe some of you think, hey, there's not much difference, especially nowadays. Quotations, you could ask who said it, why did they say it, what does it mean, and then maybe they don't know who said it until after they've responded, and then they find out the real answer. Song lyrics. You could give the beginning or part of the lyrics of the song and ask that person, how did you come to write this? What does it mean? Share the meaning of those words with us. Or if you're more technologically advanced than I, you could probably play just a little bit of that song, just a few seconds of the song, and then have the person be the person that wrote it. Objects. Some of the ways you can use objects, I mentioned about the books or magazines. You could have people wear a t-shirt to the meeting, and then they could tell about their t-shirt, or they could tell about somebody's other t-shirt with a saying on it. One of my favorites, I don't think Daryl is here, but Daryl Zeller, every time I see him when he's not dressed up, he's wearing a t-shirt. One of my favorites, teamwork. A lot of people doing what I say. So I thought that was a funny one that he had. I guess his family gets some t-shirts all the time. You could have people wear a hat, and they could either tell about their hat, They could give their hat to somebody else that they figure maybe it fits more appropriately, and that person would have to tell why they are wearing, and hopefully come up with a wide variety of hats. A greeting card. You could take a greeting card, and it could be after you have enjoyed your greeting card. Oh, there's somebody with a hat. You could take the greeting card, save the front of it, put it in an envelope, and the person opens it up and says, this is what the greeting card is. I'm sending it to someone for this reason or whatever, or I received this. Who did you receive it from? And what does it mean to you? Why did the person send it to you? Or you could tell more of what you would write inside that greeting card. So that's something you could save and use. You could have items, and around our house, we're such pack rats, we have all kinds of unusual antique items. So you could bring those out, and person has to tell all about them, and maybe they really don't know what it is, but they'll give it their best try. You can pretend that you invented this item and you're taking it in to have it patented, and tell us all about it. And it could be an item that they may not recognize, or it could be just some common item, but you're the person who first came up with that. One idea would be something like a clothespin. You're the inventor of the clothespin. Tell us all about that. Or what is your life like as a clothespin? Or new uses for that clothespin besides hanging clothes up, which not too many people do, but some I do. You could have an item given to you and you have to sell it or endorse it. Tell us all about it. You've received a gift. At one of the clubs, we had at Christmas time, the Table Topics master had gifts. They were wrapped, but no names on them. And so we selected a gift, opened it up, and told all about how wonderful this gift was or how we're going to use it or whatever. And then we had the gift to take home, which was nice. I looked for something new, and I found an idea that I love. And this would be good for around Christmas, but you could do it anytime. You could have a selection. You could ask people to bring in a food item, a canned good or something in a box. So anyways, food items that are non-perishable. Then I reach in and I pull out, it could be a can of soup, it could be tomato sauce, it could be a package of rice, whatever it might be. And I have to tell about that dish that I'm going to prepare, that new recipe and how delicious it's going to be and so forth. And then at the end of the meeting, these could be saved and given to a food bank. So that might be something that your club would do maybe at Christmas time or any time. Getting to know you. This would be all those related to stages of your life. You could be giving advice to yourself at different ages. Superlatives, your first, whatever, your best, your worst. Also, you could have items in your life that tell about you. If your mirror could talk about you, what would it say? If your car were to talk about you, what would it say? If your pet told us about you, what would it say? So here you would be getting to know one another by asking questions about hobbies, interests, experiences, memories. Another is speaking opportunities. You're going to address a specified audience or event. You're delivering a toast, a roast, a proclamation, a campaign speech, or you're an expert, quote expert, to testify at a trial or a news conference of some kind. You could, if you wanted to go just a little bit step up, you could actually have certificates that could be used. You could print out world's greatest procrastinator. Okay, Susie, you're gonna use this and present it to George and give a talk about how George really deserves this special award. Interactions, this could be interviews, presenting and accepting awards, introductions. One way, maybe some meeting you don't have topics, I would introduce Tom. Tom would then choose somebody else in the room to introduce, and that person would introduce somebody else. So you'd see what you do know about the person, either factually or what they mean to you as far as a fellow member of your club, or perhaps what you would like to know about them. So this continuing on introduction of one another. When you are a table topics master, it's kind of nice to make it special. These are some of the ways that I've seen it done. If you're going to have, perhaps you're on a trial or you're having a debate or whatever, you could make a big point of starting with order in the court, order in the court. Or you could have a scroll, hear ye, we are presenting awards for whatever. One lady had questions about vacations or visiting different countries. She brought in a globe, and on the globe she had little tiny, probably Post-it notes on different places, and the globe would be spun, and then you take off your topic and read about your country or your location that you were supposed to talk about. One time the theme was flowers, and there was a big vase with artificial flowers, so you'd pull out a flower and there attached to it would be your topic. One gentleman, his daughter had some kind of a crystal ball, and he did a really fun job of using this for telling people about what was going to be happening to them. What do you call those? Not predictions, but anyway, he took this crystal ball and he'd say, I see that you are traveling to a far away place, or I see that someone is coming into your life you haven't seen for 20 years. And so he had this little pretend crystal ball. Now he could have done it without, but that really made it a lot more fun. If it was something about travel, you could even make some paper airplanes and shoot one across the room to the next table topics presenter or person who's supposed to talk at table topics. Interactions, this is where you would be having contact between one person and another. Now what I've seen happen there is, okay, Tom, do you want to be pro or con for the issue? Tom would get to choose his side, but he doesn't know the issue yet. And so after he chooses, he's going to be for it or against it, then he finds out what that topic is. And then he could choose maybe somebody to be the other side if wanted. You could have two famous people meeting. So they would meet and you'd say, okay, you're Marilyn Monroe and you're whoever, and you're have this interaction. You could give some points that they should be asking one another. Another idea I saw was getting to know you. Each person, when we came in, we were asked before the meeting started or at the very start of the meeting to write down something that we felt very strongly about. Okay, I feel this very strongly that this is something that should be or should happen or whatever. And then they were all folded up, these little pieces of paper, and put into a basket. When it was your turn, you would reach into the basket, you would read this statement. Now, it'd be important tell everybody to write very clearly, and then you responded to it, but you also talked about who you felt made this statement. Who is that person that feels so strongly that we should, whatever it might be on that piece of paper. And then you find out afterward who it really was, whether you were correct or not. You could have a crisis hotline. So person is responding to a caller with a concern. Now you could do that in different ways. You could give another person a question to ask, or you could give the person a cell phone and they know who the person is because you've given it to them on a piece of paper, and they respond who they're talking to, yes. But we as an audience don't know who it is, and we try to guess who was that you were talking to, you were responding to. Either the person is seeking advice, or you're just like, oh, wow, I can't believe it, I'm talking to you. Oh, you're one of my heroes, or I'm sorry about what happened. But anyway, you don't find out who this person is until after the person has done some talking to the person over the pretend phone. Time travel is another. What's it going to be like 100 years from now? Transportation-wise, health-wise, entertainment-wise. You could be, or you could interview a historical figure, tell the rest of the story. Maybe we'll find out a little bit more about this famous person than we thought we knew. Have the person be a critic. Bring in books, movies, TV. One fun thing we did, my club at one point met in a room at a church, and it was used for daycare for the younger children. And they had all their artwork posted up around the room. So when it was your turn to do your topic, you were pointed to one of those, we didn't take them down from the wall, but pointed to one of those masterpieces there by the really young children, and you told all about it. What did this really show? What did it mean, the artist? And so that was a fun way to handle it, and it was right there in our room. Tabloid stories. You could be an advice columnist, a fashion critic. There's something that comes to the readers of the Wall Street Journal. It comes out maybe a couple times a year, and it's fancy pantsy ads for the high-end fashions. And some of those I cannot believe. They are atrocious. They are, I think, who would ever wear these in public? But I tore those out once, and then I would say, oh, you are getting kind of stuck in a rut as far as your apparel. And this is the new you that we're going to see. And I gave the person this picture of this fashion, and they would have to talk about how that's the new them wearing that kind of apparel. Use your imagination. What if you owned a goose that laid golden eggs? What if you were a character in a fairy tale, a superhero? If you were a vehicle, what would best be you? If you were a building, what building do you see yourself as? You could have some questions that are really quite challenging. For example, your boss has invited you over to have one of his wife's home-cooked meals. The casserole is awful. How do you respond? What do you say? Or your aunt has given you one of her treasured paintings. She wants you to have it now rather than later when she passes on. And this is not at all your style. You do not like this. It doesn't fit into your surroundings. What do you do? So you could set up some kind of challenging situations. Another one I heard, I don't remember what the response was, but how do you tell that new young couple that just moved in next door that maybe they should keep their blinds more tightly closed? So these
windows down.
And the windows down. Set a scene or a scenario. Be the various people or objects. I remember somebody having us be out on the beach. You're the beach ball. So what is it like being the beach ball? You're the seagull. I think I was told to be the trash receptacle. And talking about, oh my goodness, why can't they ever? They can hit the beach ball where they want it to go, but they can't make it inside me. So, all this stuff's there. Or it gets kind of unpleasant by the end of the day, the baby's diapers and so on. So you could have people be inanimate objects as well. My life as a window washer. You could be a real estate. I saw someone do a real estate salesman trying to sell us homes in very weird locations. One of my good friends that used to do creative table topics with me, she was great for coming up with scenarios. We had one about the day the goldfish died, and she set the scene for this very rich lady. And others might have prized dogs and cats and so forth, but hers was her goldfish, Goldie. And oh my, she walked out, Goldie is floating upside down in the goldfish bowl. And then we had all the possible culprits. The nephew, the butler, all these different people were kind of spelled out, told a phrase or two about them, and we had to tell about, oh, it couldn't be me. I would never do such a thing. And then the detective at the end divulges who he or she thinks actually did that dastardly deed. You could have starter lines. What is that large truck coming up the driveway? And the person has to go on from there. Or I woke to a very unfamiliar sound. What's happening? And maybe they'd have a flying saucer out on the yard, or who knows. Let me see if I have any additional. Oh, another one that would be difficult to do now, but later on when we're meeting in person, two people respond. There's a situation set, and the first person talks about it giving verbal only. So you have to stand, just tell your story, no gestures, no body language, no facial expressions. The second person, no verbal, but instead they give all the gestures and the body language. So a great one for that would be Grandma's roller coaster ride. So you can imagine what would be said about Grandma going on her first roller coaster ride, one person telling the story, but the other reacting with all the gestures and body language. And let me see if I have any more. I guess, Tom, it's almost time. Shall we?
Yeah, you see if any, yeah, you can do what you were going to do.
Oh, here are a couple others. This is single words. I had people wear it around their neck. You don't be telling about fear when you had a fearful experience and so forth, but you are fear. You are that emotion, or you are joy, or you are greed. So in order to help the person remember that they're not supposed to talk about them in relation to it, but they're supposed to be that emotion, I had them wear, and also the audience would then remember this is what the person's supposed to be and talk about how that affects their lives. And the other would be just utterances. So I give the word and then the person would respond. For example, wow. So that's your topic. Wow. Or ouch. Ouch. Or oops. Oops. And then you build your response around that single utterance. Another would be trying to tell how to do something and not being able to use any props. Tell us, how do you bake a souffle? How do you change a baby's diaper? How do you repair or install some type of equipment, but you don't have anything to use, you just have to tell about it in words. So if anybody wants to give any responses to any of those that you heard, or get a couple topics, or we can just turn it back to Tom.
You have a function on there where you can raise your hand, I think. you go to, I did want to have a couple of questions that I have for you that I'm not sure that you covered, and that is the two things that's like chalk on a chalkboard, putting your nails on a chalkboard, and that is when a person has giving a table topic to a brand new person, a guest that's in the room, and when someone says, I think I'll give you an easy one,
Oh.
it really bothers me when you do that, because then it makes it as though, well, this is an easy one, my gosh, I don't ever want to come back because I might get a hard one. And so that is something that's a little cautious for me. Another issue, and that is the table topic contest question. It's always bothered me when the question is so long, because it usually has to be read twice. So you might be careful if you're doing a table topics contest, don't make the topic so long that you have to read through like 2 or 3 sentences long. Would be really terrible. So make it 4, 5, 6, 8 words, not too long. I did want to share, for years when I was teaching, I had students who were not the greatest people in terms of academics, and never had any of them ever given a speech in public. But a table topic that worked well for them is they submitted 3 things to go in 3 little hats or 3 little boxes or whatever. They would submit the topics, and the topic was submit 3 things: an object, a mode of transportation, and a location. And so they might, for instance, and then you just draw out of a hat and that's your topic. And so I am going to Chicago with a violin on a skateboard. Tell that story. And of course, then we're going to get impossible stories like I going to Hawaii, on a bicycle. Well, people said, well, I'm riding around on an aircraft carrier and I have to ride the bicycle back and forth while it gets to Hawaii. But it seemed that they handled those well enough, knowing that they had submitted them and had fun with it. So just a topic. But do you want to go ahead and give some subjects?
Yeah, I had a couple more Tom reminded me of. I actually heard once where the table topics master called on the guests first before anybody had, and I think it was a first-time visitor. Now maybe they thought they were being kind, or I don't know, but make sure that the guest gets to hear a few. And then you, as Tom said, you don't say, well, here's an easy one for you, but you have maybe one that is toward the easier end, not too difficult. And then it's, of course, good to suggest if they don't like that one, that they could choose another topic.
And one of the things I don't think you mentioned was one that might be a whole table topics wrapped around a holiday event like Christmas. And one of my favorite ones to give to somebody was, you're the last Christmas tree on the Christmas tree lot that didn't get picked. How do you feel? And so, or the ornament that's hanging on the tree that didn't get put up this year, whatever you want to make up, but something wrapped around a holiday, the whole event. So, but I think you did refer to that. So you're going to call on some people?
I don't know if anybody wants to do a topic.
I can't imagine there not being anybody that wants. So if you want to, under reactions, you could raise a hand and we'll see your, hopefully we'll see your, well, there's not very many people that have a camera on, so we won't know. Just speak up, I guess. Unmute yourself and speak up that you're volunteering. Sunny.
Oh, Sunny, is that you?
No, that's not me.
Oh.
Well, I thought of another one. You could do the, what do you call them? Fairy tales, or the little rhymes that we remember from childhood revisited. So you just give the first words and then they are not allowed to continue on as they maybe recall or don't recall. But for instance, Jack and Jill went up the hill. Now you can't say to fetch a pail of water. You have to make some other, why did Jack and Jill go up the hill? And you have to keep it G or PG rated. But anyway, you could start with the starting lines to some of those familiar nursery rhymes, and then
or an ongoing story too, or continues on. Just keep telling.
A couple more things to be careful about. I remember one time somebody asked a table topic about, what do you think about the road repairs that are being done someplace, and for somebody that doesn't live in that community, they wouldn't know anything about it. Or if we asked, especially when we're more multicultural, I might ask about something from the past that others wouldn't know, going as far back as my age, or people that were in the news in the past. Just make sure that the person realizes if they're fairly new. If you're an old timer and you don't know, then you just use your table topics skills and talk about it anyway.
Okay.
But anyway, back to Tom and see if there's any last minute.
Okay, we are back here. I just looked at my watch and we're about ready to run out of time, but I know we have to give Jeremiah some opportunity to make some announcements, and then I'll start by announcing next month's schedule. As I mentioned earlier, we expect to hear some history from past District Governor Paul Clark and Bob Palmer, who each have their own special area of expertise when it comes to Toastmaster history. So they're going to be there. Bob, are you still there to say anything about that? I guess not. I guess he's not. But anyway, they'll be here next month. Ed Edenhausen will be doing a Better Speaker series, our accredited speaker, our one and only accredited speaker in the history of District 12. And he'll be doing a presentation next month on the Better Speaker series. And our other, let's see, that's pretty much it for there. I don't think I forgot anything. And we'll have something else too. So, but I did want to say how those of you who've not been to Speakers Bureau, you can see why I am particularly proud of the presenters that we have at our QSs. And you see the quality of the program that was put on this evening. There's individual speakers in their fields of expertise. And it happens every month. So we're going to be doing it again next month. Now, can we go to Jeremiah, or maybe I don't know who you want to make announcements, but Jeremiah, we'll go to you. And if you have any district announcement, now is the time.
You know, I do, but I think at this time, what I'm actually going to do is I would like to introduce your incoming district director, who's going to be, this is kind of falls underneath him and the rest of this year in regards to the educationals for TLI. I'd actually like to introduce Jose Preciado, who was just elected this past weekend as your incoming district director, and he will lead us through the announcements. So congratulations to Jose and Suzanne and Morris both, who also got elected. So Jose, do you want to give us their announcements for the remainder of the year?
Yes, thank you so very much. And wow, it's they say time flies when you're having fun, and that's true for tonight, and it's also true for this year. It just flew right by us. So for the rest of the year, we will have 2 more events. We will have, well, actually, I'm going to talk about June 20th, which will be our TLI. Our other event is going to be for our new area and division training, which is the new team for next year. But on TLI, we will be again meeting on this platform, Zoom. We were hoping that that we will be able to meet in person, but it's not going to happen, it seems like. So what we will have is we will have both the Jeremiah Lal, who is our district director now, given his speech and thanks and all of that. And then I will be speaking about what our plans are for next year. Then we will have our officers training. We're going to do it a little bit different this year. We're going to have videos as a pre-work for all the officers, for all the incoming officers. Now, it's very important. We will have videos for every single one of the positions, of the officers' positions, but these videos will be pre-work. In order for them to get certified, they must attend the TLI or a training later on. We will probably schedule 1 or 2 trainings after that. But that is the plan for our TLI, and then we'll be ready for next year. Back to you, Jeremiah.
Great, thank you so much. All right. Well, we definitely look forward to, hopefully being able to see everybody at those things, and really appreciate everybody's, support today, here at the first at the first virtual speakers bureau. So, and Tom and Sunny for putting this together. They really spearheaded this and definitely doing a great job. So I really appreciate all their hard work. So thank you so much, Tom.
Thank you. Thank you. And I was going to say something before we leave, and make sure you know that next meeting is June the 3rd. But I have to say something. All of our speakers were great, but of course I have to say something extra about my wife as the third speaker. When I mentioned 40 years of table topics, the interesting facet about that is that 40 consecutive years in the same club. Club 815. So if you have any doubt about where that's a great club, you might want to visit sometime. A little bit of a commercial on my behalf, though. One of the things, I have a few others that are helping me that I know that are doing their job too. But if any of you in the audience knows of people who are within range of getting their DTM under a legacy, there are a few of us who are willing to help mentor them with that. So contact me and I'll either do myself or help find someone to help you get that last step, if that's possible. With that, I appreciate everyone being here, and I especially appreciate Sunny for her help in putting this together, because it might not have happened without Sunny. So,
Tom, I just want to remind everyone, we do have a YouTube channel now for Speakers Bureau, and this will get posted sometime over this week, and the link will get emailed out.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. That is wonderful. That's exactly what Club 1348 does every meeting, and thanks to Rob Gunneman, who posts those speeches. So if you're in 1348, you get to see all of the speeches you gave and go back and see them. And so it's a great way to do that. And I want to pass this. Linda is a visiting, so that she gives me proper respect when I come and finally make it to her meeting. I will plan to do. I've been saying I'm going to do that forever. Tell us a little bit about District 100 Speakers Bureau. You are still muted, I think. Oh, you're still muted, I think, Linda.
Your phone is muted, Linda.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, yes.
I had to unmute both on the system and on my phone, sorry. I'm having audio problems with my computer. But we did have our second online Speakers Bureau meeting this past Saturday, and we will get out the invite for you folks as well to join us next month. We did have one candidate who did qualify, Michael Ozier. And it went very well. We were very pleased. We have some fine tuning as far as Q&A, because that's where you get the interaction with the audience. And so it will help if one person is watching the chat for the questions, as Michael pointed out. It was hard to tell when there were questions and from whom. So we'll fine tune that. We're hoping to have another candidate in June in our third online meeting. We did not have a candidate on the first meeting, but we did have one this weekend, and we hope to have one again in June. I don't know when we'll be back in person, maybe July, we don't know yet. We're all being played by ear. And we might go hybrid. That's an option as well, having physical on-site and online participation, which I think would be a good compromise, because a lot of people have a hard time getting to different locations. So we're still fine-tuning it, and you folks did great tonight, and I would definitely encourage you to try and have a candidate next month as you've worked out some of the kinks tonight. It's a pleasant meeting to be in, and thank you for the invite.
Well, we didn't seek to have a kinky meeting, but we had a little bit, but it mostly worked out well, and everything was fun, and we certainly will consider that hybrid concept, because I think that has some great potential in the future. And if you send us the link, we can send that out to everybody and make sure that we have a little bit of commingling here between our speakers bureaus. So thank you very much. And
it is on our calendar as well.
So thank you all for coming, and especially the people that haven't been here. So we're looking forward to having bigger and better and more important meetings in the future with more participation. So thank you for being here, and we will end this unless there's any burning questions from the audience. Okay, thank you again so much for being here.
Good night.
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 Good night.